Hello, so tonight we are going to be talking about intermittent fasting and how it affects body composition. Let's just get this presentation pulled up here. Perfect. So, the reason that I wanted to look into this topic is actually I have had 3 surgeries in the past 9 months. So, as we discussed in this course, a surgical patient is in a negative nitrogen balance. So, as I've been recovering from these surgeries, I've noticed some pretty detrimental effects to my own body composition. And now that I'm back and fully healthy, I've been trying to get my original physique back. And I've actually been trying intermittent fasting to see how it affects my own body composition. And I actually am getting pretty interesting and good results. And so I decided to do this topic to see if intermittent fasting is really rooted in science and what the data says about intermittent fasting and how it affects body composition. So, what is intermittent fasting? Intermittent fasting is a popular trend where individuals will restrict caloric intake for a set period. This lifestyle, also referred to as time restricted feeding, is becoming increasingly popular in diet culture and the fitness industry. People who are intermittent fasting often eat during certain windows, followed by fasting windows. So, an example of this is a 8 hour feeding window and a 16-hour fasting window. Um, so, somebody could be eating from noon to 8 p.m. and then fast from 8 p.m. to noon the following day. Additionally, some users actually do an alternate day fast where they will have no caloric intake for 24 hours, followed by the next 24 hours they eat normally. And then there are even some people who do prolonged fasting. People who follow intermittent fasting actually are claiming to have incredible health benefits, such as improved mental clarity, weight loss, fat loss, and even muscle and strength gain. So, I looked into intermittent fasting and body fat. And so when the body is going through periods of fasting, the pancreas is secreting glucagon. The function of glucagon is to elevate blood glucose levels by tapping into reserves stored in the body. Blood glucose levels are typically restored through glycogen degradation and lipolysis. The breakdown of stored lipids during periods of fasting is the main reason for the popularity of intermittent fasting. So they think that when you are following a fast, you're using fat for fuel. So, when a sample of normal weight, overweight, or obese individuals were instructed to follow an alternate day fast where they abstained from a caloric intake for 24 hours, followed by 24 hours of eating normally, for 6 to 12 weeks, they actually came back with some pretty interesting results. So, they reported a 3 to 7% reduction in body weight and a 3 to 5.5 kilogram reduction in body fat. Furthermore, their cholesterol had actually dropped anywhere from 10 to 20%, and their triglyceride levels had also dropped from 14 to 40%. Additional studies show that consuming all your food within an 8 hour window could actually be quite beneficial for weight loss. And then one of the questions that got brought up was if you're following an intermittent fasting lifestyle and you're only consuming calories within a 4 to 8 hour window, could that just put you in a caloric deficit? And could that caloric deficit be the reason that you're losing fat and weight and not the metabolic changes that occurred during intermittent fasting? So, intermittent fasting and muscle mass. And I thought this was an interesting photo because I've actually followed this Kino Body diet. It's a popular fitness brand online, and I'm just interested in their program and their mentality. And it's actually been really interesting. So, it's called the Kino Body diet, and they promote intermittent fasting. So, how does intermittent fasting affect muscle mass? So, what the studies are showing is that if you're following a fasting lifestyle, you're probably not going to lose muscle. However, all the research has shown that you're probably not going to gain very much muscle if you're doing intermittent fasting. And the reason for this is that while you're fasting, it's pretty hard to eat in a caloric surplus to put yourself in an anabolic state to gain muscle mass. So, most of the studies actually concluded that people who were trying to gain muscle while fasting would actually lose body fat and their levels of skeletal muscle would actually remain the same. There was actually another interesting trial that took two groups. One did fasting, and then one was just eating a normal diet. And they had the same amount of calories eaten over a 24-hour window. Group A ate normally over the 24 hours, and then Group B did the fasting and only ate during an 8-hour window. And they also had an identical amount of protein consumed. And it actually showed that neither group gained any muscle. However, the group that ate normally throughout the day had more power and a little bit of strength, whereas the group who did intermittent fasting had no increase in power and strength. So, the implications for this is that if somebody is trying to do intermittent fasting for pure fat loss, then it would be okay. But if you're trying to do intermittent fasting in hopes of gaining muscle, it might not be the best option for you. So, what about intermittent fasting and weight loss? So, again, it brings up the question, is it the fasting and the metabolic changes that happen during the fast, or is it just the caloric deficit? And what a lot of the studies are showing are that people who just eat a caloric deficit, maybe 5 to 6 small meals a day, versus people who do intermittent fasting and consume maybe 2 or 3 large meals a day, it actually has shown that it really doesn't matter what you do. If you're in a caloric deficit and you are having some form of exercise, you're going to lose weight. And that's what a lot of the studies have shown. I know there's a huge meta analysis that looked into this. One benefit to intermittent fasting was actually in a population that had type 2 diabetes. So it did show some pretty profound benefits to people with type 2 diabetes in terms of their insulin. So, again, an area for further research is it the intermittent fasting which causes the weight loss, or is it just the caloric deficit? And just in all the studies that I looked into, people had zero complications from fasting. They had no detrimental effects, there was no harm to them. And so, some implications for this could be if fasting works better than eating 5 to 6 small meals a day for an individual, I think there is promise in using this as a weight loss tool in the future. Another thing a lot of people who support intermittent fasting believe is that it will help improve your blood lipid levels and that it can have cardioprotective properties. Although this is a strong claim from people who support intermittent fasting, the research only shows a slight increase in HDL cholesterol and really no change in LDL cholesterol or triglycerides. And actually, a unique study looked at Muslims during the month of Ramadan. And during Ramadan, Muslims do not eat from sun up to sundown. So it was a perfect population to look into intermittent fasting. And what these researchers found was that people who were fasting all day for a month had just a slight increase in their HDL cholesterol, and they really had no change in their LDL cholesterol or serum triglyceride levels. So now I think it's important that we talk about contraindications to intermittent fasting. When you are fasting, you are in a restrictive eating pattern. There's no way around it. If you're restricting food intake for a period of time, that is restrictive eating. So anybody who has any history of eating disorders, or if you feel like there's an eating disorder coming on, intermittent fasting would just simply not be a good choice. It could also cause some food obsession. If you're fasting, maybe doing an alternate day fast, you could kind of become obsessed with food actually, and it can almost drive you insane. And so that's not good. Obviously, mental health and well being is more important than fasting or any benefit that could be caused by fasting. And lastly, if there's medical reasons, if your physician says that you should not fast, then obviously you should listen to your physician. So that pretty much sums it up. The research has shown that intermittent fasting can be beneficial for weight loss and actually has shown to have a good effect on fat loss. However, it has no real effect on muscle gain. You will preserve muscle while fasting as long as you're eating enough protein and a relatively um, high number of calories. You're only running maybe a 250 to 500 calorie deficit. And so for all the hype that intermittent fasting, it is still a new trend and there really aren't many long-term studies out there. So I think before this could be used in practice to help our clients and really prescribe intermittent fasting, there has to be more data. if our clients want to try it, I think it's fine, and there's just no harmful effects, obviously, unless they have any symptoms of any of these contraindications listed on the page. But it's shown to be a safe and effective way to lose weight and could be a great alternative to a normal calorie restrictive diet. It's actually a very, very interesting topic to research, and I am so happy I did. I learned so much from it. And this is my reference page. And that is all that I have. So thank you very much for listening.